Hey, how's it going? If you have goosies or bumps, don't worry, there's a solution for that. The name is R.L. Stine. Robert Lawrence Stine, born in October 8th of 1943, also known as R.L. Stine and Bob Stine, is an American novelist and writer. Well known for targeting younger audiences, Stine, who is often called the Stephen King of children's horror, is the author of dozens of popular horror fiction novels. I remember the good old days when I'd be excited for school just because of these books. Stine's books are read all over the world. So far, he has sold over 400 million books, probably more so than when this video is posted, making him one of the best-selling children's authors in history. Good job. Sorry, Dr. Seuss. Anyway, in the early 90s, R.L. Stine was writing the Fear Street books, but aimed at teenagers. His wife and his editor at the time suggested he should try doing a horror book series for 7 to 12-year-olds as it was an untapped market. Smart. Stine didn't want to do it at first, as he thought it would screw up Fear Street, which he was doing at the time. He thought the audience for Fear Street would think it wouldn't be cool, due to it being aimed for a younger audience. I think I read a few Fear Street books, but Goosebumps always gave me goosies. However, he ended up agreeing to do it anyway. Stine needed a name for the new series, though. He was reading a TV guide when, lo and behold, he saw an ad at the bottom of the page that said, "It's Goosebumps Week on Channel 11. Stine thought it would be the perfect title for his new series. He was contracted to do 4 books for the Goosebumps series, those being Welcome to Deadhouse, Stay Out of the Basement, Monster Blood, and Say Cheese and Die. Monster Blood is one of my favorites. The first 3 books were released simultaneously in July of 1992. Sales for the series were initially very slow, as all book series are. However, within a few months, the sales of the books exploded. That's when Scholastics decided to extend their contract with Stine for 6 more books. Sales increased even more, and also the contract was extended to 1 book a month. Stine claimed it took 8 days to write a Goosebumps book. I could see that, but it was still scary. Before he would start writing, he would spend 2 to 3 days outlining the book. He said the books about summer camp were the hardest to write, since he never attended any summer camps. I find them quite scary as well. All the other children, social interactions. Who can relate? R.L. Stine was born in Columbus, Ohio in 1943. He was the son of Anne and Louis Stine. He would eventually have a younger brother and sister, respectively, Harlan and William Stine, also known as Bill, or Pamela Stine. Sorry about that. No one in his family ever called him R.L. Stine. Everyone called him Bob. He decided to call himself R.L. when he started publishing horror novels because he wanted people to think he was a female. He would fit right in nowadays. When Bob was 9, he found an old typewriter up in the attic. That discovery changed his life. He carried it down to his room and started typing a bunch of stories and little joke books. His mother begged him to go outside and play, but Bob always said it was too boring outside. Who doesn't love birds? He stayed in his room typing away, and he has been writing ever since. In school, Bob was not a great student. He got mostly B's. That's still pretty great, but bewildering. Get it because I said a B. But he never studied very hard. He spent most of his time writing stories and joke books, or joke magazines, to become more popular. As he was a very quiet person and reserved, it was interesting how he came to be. He was terrible in math and he hated gym class. The only sport he was ever good at was ping pong. After graduating from Ohio State University in 1965, Bob headed to New York City to become a writer. He wrote dozens of joke books and humor books for children. He also created Bananas, a zany humor magazine which he did for 10 years. In those days, he wrote under the name Jovial Bob Stine. He married Jane Wilderhorn in 1969. Jane became an editor and writer, and they worked together on several children's books. Later, Jane and her partner formed their own publishing company, Parachute Press, and helped create all of Stine's most popular book series. Stine currently resides in New York City with his wife and his dogs, Minnie and Nadine. His son, Matthew, is a composer, musician, and sound designer. Arts run deep in the blood. Matt was married in 2014 and had a son, making Stein a grandparent. Good job, Stein. Tim Jacobs. Many people probably know his artwork from all the Goosebumps series, except the first one, was born on April 21st of 1959. He's an American artist who was the main illustrator for Goosebumps for 1992 to 2000. He's best known for his work on the original series, where he painted 60 or 62 original covers. Many of his Goosebumps covers were created using traditional paintings. In recent years, Jacobs has begun using computers to create digital art. The way of the future. Schlasskitz had two artists in mind to do the Goosebumps covers, Tim Jacobs and Jim Thyssen. Jacobs created the art for the first Goosebumps book, Welcome to Dead House, and Thyssen created the cover art for Stay Out of the Basement. Schlasskitz chose Jacobs to do the art for the Goosebumps series because they liked his use of saturated colors to get the eye for the children. Before designing the covers, Jacobs would be given a short story synopsis and have discussions with art directors at Schlasskitz to give an idea of what the cover should be, to which Stein had no input on. Jacobs would apply various colors combinations to each cover and tried not to repeat any combination from previous covers. Smart man. Makes things different. As you can see with the other covers, there is quite a variety of what's going on, and each one could be a poster if you want it on your wall. One of the leading factors in the schemes between Parachute Press and Schlasskitz was the battle for marketing rights. Both organizations held rights to elements of Goosebumps franchise. Schlasskitz believed that Parachute had overstepped their boundaries and rights to the franchise by authorizing several businesses' details and press conferences. Parachute accused Schlasskitz of hindering their ability to profit on the franchise and decreasing their own potential revenue. Of course, that's a sticky situation and will give you goosebumps. Schlasskitz claimed that Stein was employing ghostwriters for many Goosebumps books. According to them, Stein's 1996 publishing agreement stated that he would be the sole writer of each main series. Schlasskitz alleged that Stein wrote the first 16 books in the series independently, after which he began to employ freelancers. But Schlasskitz accused Stein of allowing freelancers to make the majority of his creative decisions, while he contributed minimal amount of changes. Schlasskitz went as far as to accuse ghostwriters for the decline in popularity of the series. Parachute argued that the sole writer clause was designed to prevent plagiarism, not to prevent Stein from receiving any assistance. They conceded their freelancers that helped in fleshing out chapter-by-chapter outlines created by Stein, sometimes creating and drafting manuscripts, however. Parachute also argued that the initial concept and final creative control belonged to Stein, with Stein often disregarding or rewriting the draft manuscripts. Years later, Stein would claim, "I wrote all the Goosebumps books myself." Believe it or not. I believe it is. Because, you can tell when a writer is writing something different from a ghostwriter, usually, unless it's a musical artist, Anyway, sometimes I had writers help me with their outlines, but all books were by me, he said. Assuming that his words were contradicting of the lawsuit, he likely meant that freelancers helped him turn his story outlines into manuscripts. The topic of the authorship was mostly non-essential to the dispute as a whole. One judge noted that neither side had demonetized or demonstrated that it was entitled to judgment as a matter of law, since Schlasskitz had failed to prove damages. Of course, they mostly have children's books, so they probably don't know law that much. As a joke. Alleging that Parachute Press violated Stein's contract, Schlasskitz began withholding payments from Parachute Press in the late 90s. This prompted Parachute Press to take legal action against Schlasskitz. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Parachute Press Inc. and Schlasskitz Entertainment Inc. were involved in several lawsuits. The legal disputes were technically sparred on by Parachute Press, specifically Joanne Warsher and R.L. Stein's wife, Jane Stein, on March 15th of 1996. The two women demanded the marketing rights to the Goosebumps series from Schlasskitz on behalf of Parachute Press. Parachute's first action against Schlasskitz was technically part of class action lawsuit on October 1st of 1997, captioned Schlasskitz Corporation Secretaries Litigation 97. If you wanted to know, The suit alleged that Scholasticus had mismanaged the Goosebumps franchise, causing a loss in revenue from missed businesses. Parachute filed a suit again with Parachute Press and also against Scholasticus. That was quite a sticky deal during that time frame. While legal proceedings commenced during November 14th of 97, it wasn't until January 29th of 1999 that the case was dismissed. In 2000, the dismissal was appealed and brought back to court. On February 1st of 1999, Scholasticus filed a suit the same day with the case caption, Scholasticus Inc. and Scholasticus Entertainment vs. Parachute Press and Parachute Publishing, LLC. That suit claimed that Stein had breached his standard issue publishing contract. Parachute would also file another suit the same day, caption, Parachute Press vs. Scholasticus. Very sticky indeed. In this document, Parachute demanded approximately $36 million in financial reparations, claiming that Scholasticus had been excessively strict regarding their contract with Stein. Harsh. I'd be upset too. While Parachute and Scholasticus fought over the rights to the Goosebumps franchise, many Goosebumps-oriented business deals were stalled or canceled. At the time, a Goosebumps film had been discussed, but was ended reportedly due to the legal battle. In addition to the problems brought forward to the legal justice dispute, Goosebumps sales began to decline in late 97. Scholasticus' stock market value dropped more than 50% in that year as well. However, Scholasticus began to recover in 1998. Stein's contract with Scholasticus was not renewed in early 2000, and Stein left Scholasticus. That's a lot of Scholasticus. By 2003, Scholasticus agreed to purchase all rights to the Goosebumps franchise for $9 million. The decision led to the first set of Goosebumps reprints, and eventually the Goosebumps revival in 2008. In 2003, Jane Stein was quoted as saying, "I'm happy with the way things are turning out, and excited about the future," even though they got 1/3 of what they wanted. The Goosebumps series falls under many genres, but mainly horror and thriller. Though Stein characterized the series as scary books, they're also funny. Each book features different child characters and settings. Primary protagonists are middle class and can be either male or female. In Goosebumps series, our central characters are often placed in remote or isolated locations, diverging from common social conventions. This can range anywhere from comfortable suburban areas to boarding schools, foreign villages, or also campsites. Books typically feature characters who recently moved to a new neighborhood or are sent to stay with relatives. The books in the Goosebumps series feature similar plot structures, with children being involved at scary situations. At his peak, Stein was known to complete these series extremely quickly, some of which were written in only 6 days. The books are mostly written in first-person narrative, often concluding with twist endings. They contain surreal horror books, with characters encountering the strange and supernatural. The author has a plot device he follows throughout his Goosebumps books. Stein says he does not have any death in his stories, and the children in his novels are never put in situations that would be considered too serious. I mean, who doesn't come across a gnome and doesn't want to die? I'm looking at you, Lucky Charms. He attributed the success of his books to their absence of drugs, depravity, and violence. All Goosebumps books are written at the reading level range from 3rd to 7th grade, probably why I could read it so quickly, even nowadays. According to the documentary Tales from the Crypt, From Comic Books to Television, R.L. Stein said that he remembered reading the popular and infamous Tales from the Crypt comic books when he was young and credited as one of his inspirations. Books and characters in the series were inspired by books and films. For example, the character Slappy, the dummy, was inspired by literature classic The Adventures of Pinocchio. Some of Stein's ideas for the books also came from real life. Stein got the idea for the book The Haunted Mask after his son Matt had a Halloween mask he had trouble getting off. Stein also uses his childhood fears to help him write his books. The author said, "Luckily I have a great memory. As I write stories, I can remember what it feels like to be afraid and panicky." Stein states he often thinks of a title to a novel first, then lets the title lead to a story, sort of like posting on YouTube. Two common themes in the series are children triumphing over evil, and also children facing horrid or frightening situations, using their own wit and imagination to escape them. Stein does not attempt to incorporate moral lessons in his novels, and says his books are strictly reading motivation. They are quite motivating, to say the least. So, Kiris, what's your favorite children's book? Or also, what's your favorite Goosebumps books? I think Slappy is my favorite. And also, Shocker on Shock Street. And also, there's a snowman one that I liked, where the snowman came to life. It's quite interesting, to say the least. Anyway, let me know in the comments below. That's a little history of Goosebumps. Why am I talking about it today? Well, Goosebumps is one of my favorite series, and it's quite entertaining, to say the least. And it's a quick read if you're into that horror cheesiness. Anyway, have a great one. Bye.